size matters. But in this case, it's not how big it is, but what you do with it. This is the ZHIYUN Molus B-200, a bicolor 200-watt chip-on-board LED that is tiny, powerful, and capable in a variety of scenarios and use cases. Compact size has been ZHIYUN's thing with their entry into the lighting department, but this is my first-hand experience with one of their lights, and I have to say that the shrinkage that they've managed to accomplish is impressive. I don't really have much space, and this light is just what the doctor ordered. Not only is it tiny, it's easy to set up and operate, and it's perfect for content creators setting up a studio in a small space. I'm going to talk a bit about its specs and features, but you can check out the website, so I don't want to bore you with a lot of dry technical stuff that you can otherwise find in other places. But more importantly, I want to show you what it's like to set up and use, and show you some different ways that you can utilize the light for talking head and interview type setups, especially in small spaces. Before we move any further with the video, I want to throw the ZHIYUN Molus B-200 up on the stand, so everything you see from here on out is going to be lit with this light. ZHIYUN sent me this light and the 60cm parabolic softbox to make the review, but otherwise they have no role in the crafting of this video, and all opinions are mine. The Molus B-Series are lights that are shrunk down to their base components. It's a COB or chip on board. It's a heat sink, some fans, and a housing with controls and a plug. It's super simple. Comes with the light, obviously, the reflector dish, and the plug, and that's it. The B-Series are bicolor lights with an adjustable color temperature range from 2700 Kelvin to 6500 Kelvin. It also has an effects mode with 13 different effects. So ZHIYUN is touting the lack of an external control box, like you could probably see in the opening shot of this video, something like this. So there's nothing like that with the Molus B-Series. They claim they're able to ditch the external box because of the efficiency and effectiveness of the cooling system in their light fixture. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the advantages and disadvantages of an integrated versus an external control box a bit later, because there's definitely some pluses and minuses. In the Molus B-Series, there are 100, 200, 300, and 500 watt versions, and this is the 200 watt, just to reiterate. But speaking of the 200, it is 1.4 kilos or 3.09 pounds. The outer dimensions are 146 by 181 by 160 millimeters, and ZHIYUN claims that it has a CRI and TLCI of 96. Again, I don't have any way to measure those kinds of numbers, so we're just going to evaluate how the light looks based on the video. Peak brightness, according to ZHIYUN, 8,370 lux at 5,500 Kelvin at 1 meter. And then utilizing the included reflector dish, you get 39,900 lux at 5,500 Kelvin at 1 meter. So almost 5 times the output with the reflector dish, which is pretty typical of these COB lights and reflector dishes. Operation is super simple. You get an on-off switch. There are 2 dials. One dial controls color temperature and the other dial obviously controls the output, and the dials double as buttons. A short press of the CCT button cycles through the Kelvin range in increments of 1,000, and spinning the dial changes the color temperature in increments of hundreds. A short press of the dim button cycles through the brightness in increments of 20, and spinning the dial increases and decreases the output by increments of 1. There is an app, and it's super simple, and it gives you even finer control over both the output and the CCT, or the color temperature values. The app has different lighting presets like tungsten, fluorescent, sunlight, and xenon, among some others. There are also presets for different gel types for both tungsten and dysprosium light fixtures. I've never even seen that word before. If you hold down the CCT button, it switches from CCT into the effects mode. I'm not going to go through all the effects. They're the pretty typical effects that you might find on lights like this, but you do get really comprehensive control over each of the effects. You can control each one's color temperature. You can control how fast they cycle through the effect, and you can also control the output or the brightness of each effect. There is a USB-C port on the side of the light, which I'd imagine is for firmware updates, but it's also used to connect to the optional K1 wired controller, which I do not have. The lights have 3 fans on either side and then in the back. As far as I know, there's no user control over the output of the fan or how fast they spin. It seems as though there's just probably a temperature sensor in the light, and the fans ramp up or slow down as needed. The light is currently set to 25% output, and the fans seem to be coming on and shutting off intermittently. It actually just kicked on a second ago. However, at the speed that they're spinning, you can't really hear them. If the fans need to kick up to 100%, they do become audible. They will get picked up by a microphone depending on how close they are. So if you're using it as a key light and you have the brightness set to an output where the fans need to ramp up, you will be able to hear that in the microphone. That's probably only going to be an issue if you're trying to set an exposure for a scene while also maintaining a proper exposure of something outside. So if you want to be able to expose for sunlight and expose for something inside, that's going to require a ton of output. I changed the setup up just a little bit. I opened the blinds and I wanted to see if I could get enough output from this light to light both me and still have a good exposure on the window. In order to do that, it's getting much later in the day, so the sun isn't quite as intense, but I still had to set the light to 90% output. So I'm gonna be quiet for a little bit and see if the microphone on my chest is gonna pick it up. If you're setting up a talking head, interview, YouTube, whatever, and you don't have window lights, there's really not many scenarios where you're going to need that much output, in which case I don't think the fans are going to be an issue. Real quickly about the 60 centimeter parabolic softbox that ZHIYUN sent along with the lights. It's crazy how good these softboxes have gotten. I don't know if anybody's old enough to remember the days that you actually had to thread all of the little prongs through you had to stick all the prongs in here and then thread them through the softbox. Like, setting these up was a total nightmare. This one is the easiest that I have ever used. New ones have this design where you basically just pull out all of the prongs, they snap into place, and then when you want to break it down, you just press in these tabs. Some of them, the tabs can be a little bit difficult to press in, so much so that it kind of, can hurt your thumb a lot. This one I don't have any issue with. The softbox comes with 2 layers of diffusion and a honeycomb grid. Honeycomb grids limit the spill of a parabolic softbox, but they do cut the output considerably. As you add these layers of diffusion and or the grid, or if you're bouncing the light off of different surfaces, you are of course cutting the output of the light, but of course you're softening the quality and controlling the directionality of the light as well. Real quickly, I just want to run through some pretty simple lighting setups. Everything that I did, I really prioritized just using this one light as the key light and using natural light or any sort of practical light that's in the environment. And that's it, no extra LEDs, no RGB, no crazy stuff. So really what you can do in this kind of scenario, talking head, YouTube, etc., with this one light as a key light. In shots where I'm trying to expose for the outside as well as lighting myself, this is how I start. So I make sure the camera isn't going to clip the highlights. I give myself a little bit of headroom so I have control over how bright I want them to be. And then of course I add in the light. In this shot, I'm bouncing the light off of the wall, which is just to my right, your left. This is going to result in an overall brighter exposure. It's going to spill a lot more light into the room. And it's going to require a lot more output from the key light. So I don't remember exactly what this was set to, but in another example that I'm showing you in this video, I had to set it all the way up to 90%. In a shot like this, which is also exposing for the window light and also the shot that I led off the video with, I am using the parabolic softbox with the honeycomb grid, so it's much more directional. So it's not bouncing off of the wall. So I don't need as much output. For the shot that opened up the video, I only needed to set the key light, the Molus B-200, to about 56%. The resulting image here is also a lot more dramatic because the light isn't spilling all around the room, as in the previous example. So aside from the window, everything else in the room is much more dimly lit. So just a difference in how you want to light it. This last one is just sort of a simple and dramatic example of what you can do with one key light, softbox, and honeycomb grid. The light is super simple. I can't really say that enough. However, that simplicity could come with some downsides depending on your use case. For example, there are no battery powering options, and the openness of the design means it's not really going to be weather resistant in any way. This light is obviously positioned as more of a studio light. Lacking an external control box means that the controls in the LCD are on the light. So depending on how you have the light positioned, is it high up in the air, you may have some trouble seeing the LCD, especially since it's a little bit obscured by the handle, the carrying handle on the back of the light. So you won't really be able to see that. You'll probably have to tilt the light towards you in order to see what the settings are. However, you do have the app, which obviously mitigates this issue, and you do get extremely fine control over color temperature and output settings with the app. However, I wasn't able to find any way to control the effects within the app, which is weird. So there are some benefits to having a control box like this, because obviously the control box can be on the floor or it can be attached to a stand like you saw it earlier in this video, which gives you full control over the light. Even though the light could be way up in the air, you can still control it and see what you're doing with the control box. The downside of this, which I think is what ZHIYUN is really playing up with this series of lights, is the added bulk and complexity, all of the extra wires, cables, etc. that come along with this type of design. Slightly disappointed that it doesn't come with a carrying case. I personally don't need another case, another thing, but if you don't have as much stuff as I do, maybe a carrying case would be a bonus for you. Given the fact that this light is pretty small and really all you need is potentially the reflector dish, which the light fits inside of this, and a cable, you could easily throw this light into a bag or any other case that you probably already have. So it's not really that big a deal. It's not exactly what I'd call cheap, and the package that you get is pretty bare bones. So I think that ZHIYUN is really prioritizing small size and big output and the effectiveness of that cooling system, which enables that small size and big output and the overall build. I've only had it for a little over 3 weeks, so I can't exactly attest to its longevity, but it does seem like it is really well put together with nice materials and good attention to detail. Oh, and the included cable is 4.5 meters long, which is just shy of 15 feet. So again, it's not like they're really skimping on practicality given the overall simplicity of the package that you get. Well, I hope you found that useful, and please let me know if you have any questions. See you later.